Hi everyone, Molton here and welcome back to my Journey to GM series, where I talk through all my best and worst experiences and the things I learned along the way to obtaining my Grandmaster title. So continuing on from my last video, in the same tournament in the Sydney International Open, I wanted to go through this particular game which I played against a strong Armenian Grandmaster Melkumian, and the theme of this particular game was the fact that I didn't take my opportunity, and this is something that will crop up in a lot of particular games, and also ones where you're playing as well, where you have opportunities against very strong players sometimes who will make a mistake, and you really need to seize that because you don't often get a second chance. So in this particular game, the game started as d4, d5. I don't usually play d5, but my opponent plays this particular line of the exchange Slav, and I figured that this would be a good opportunity to just equalize. How wrong was I to actually go for this? Because in fact white has a very slight edge in these type of positions, and I didn't realize this at the time, and I felt in the game that I was just getting absolutely squeezed. But we're going to be talking about also defending well and making it difficult for your opponent as well, which is a very important skill to have in chess. So bishop d3 here was played, a6, knight to c3, bishop to g4. So I'm fairly comfortable in terms of my development, but this particular line which Ran played is very, very dangerous, because instead of playing the knight to f3 and allowing black to simply capture and remove some of the minor pieces off the board, he keeps things tense by going knight to e2. And now there's always these threats of chasing my bishop away with h3, with f3, g4, which I have to be careful about as well. So after the move d6, here I played bishop e7. In hindsight, maybe it might have been better to go bishop d6 here just to remove a few more pieces off the board, because this bishop ended up becoming quite a strong piece on f4 unchallenged. Now after this I played bishop h5, rook c1, castles, knight a4. This is a very typical idea for white to try and seize the c5 square. I played knight d7, a3. I tried to trade off these light square bishops. Here I played the move rook to a7, which is actually a very passive move in this position. I've seen this idea before in different positions, but in this specific one it's probably not the best way to go about things. After the move knight to c5, I realized here I don't want to take the knight, because if I take the knight, I'll simply take back and then move the rook to b1 and get a lot of pressure along the b file on my b7 pawn. So I definitely don't want to do this, and I wanted to play the move knight b6 here to take advantage of this b6 square, but there's always these tactics involving knight takes b7, and then my knight is always hanging on c6, so there's some problems here. And I played the move knight to b8, which again is super defensive move, trying to reroute and defend this a6 pawn. b6 takes, and b5. So I was in this very defensive mindset in this particular game. I think at this stage in the tournament I was doing quite well, I believe, and I just wanted to not lose with the black pieces really, to keep my chances alive. After the move queen to c2, I played queen a8. Here I would have wanted to play knight b6, but the problem is after captures, bishop c7, I lose a piece. So instead queen a8 was played, and after queen c6, the knight went to f6, but now my knight is on the wrong side of the board. And here white has a very comfortable advantage. But I'll keep playing through, because here I have to try and set up a pretty resilient defense, because my position is sort of getting quite bad. White has the two bishops, open c-file, and a lot more space. I played a5 to try and exchange off one pair of pawns. He took, and then played a4, which makes sense because he doesn't want to trade off all the pawns on the queen side. That would just help me make the draw a lot easier. Now after rook c1, knight to d6, bishop takes, the king goes to f2. I got sort of what I wanted at least, because I got into an opposite color bishop position. So I have a little bit of better drawing chances. Typically, if you want to play against the two bishops, you want to neutralize one of the bishops off the board at least, and that will give you slightly better chances of trying to hold. So I maneuver my king into the center now. King goes to d3. I played the move pawn to g5. So here I want to restrict his pawns. That's why I played g5 to stop him from grabbing space with f4. He moved his king across. At this stage, I thought I was probably lost, because I saw these plans where he often sacrifices the rook for the pawn on b4, and even though he's in exchange down, he often will get this passed a pawn rolling up the board. But I thought I would at least make it as difficult as possible for him, and then try to at least force white to sacrifice in order to win. So king c4 was played. I played bishop f4. So there's probably some idea here that if he takes, not exactly sure what my idea was here. It might have been to play rook to d7 and then attack this pawn. I think this might have been my idea. And now there's some tricks in this position, I suppose. If he moves his king or king here, maybe there's bishop d6. This might have been what I was trying to play for. But anyway, my opponent didn't take the pawn. He played rook to d1. Then I played bishop d6, again hoping for e5, and then bishop takes e5 to win the pawn. But of course he doesn't fall for that. d5, e5. So now we get this position here where I simply can't move my bishop, because the rook will always go to e6 with check. Rook to b3. Rook h8. So now I'm desperately looking for some counterplay, and I was quite happy to see this move, because at least now I have a target on h3 to attack. So rook a8. So we're still sort of shuffling our pieces here, trying to make our opponent find a win, and just sitting tight. And this is something you can do in a position that you're much worse, at least trying to, instead of gifting your opponent the win, at least make them try to find it and make it as difficult as possible. So again, just shuffling, defending against all threats, trying to throw in some tricks when I can. Probably king d6 is a mistake here, I think, because then my bishop is actually unguarded. So he might have been able to try to do something here. Maybe king c4 might be a good move. But he played rook d1. Now I have rook h8. At this point, I think we were both quite low on time, and things get a little bit messy now. They start getting interesting after g6, king c4. Now I'm losing the pawn on b4, so I just sacrifice it with bishop to e3. Rook takes b4, and when my opponent was here quite low on time, I decided that because I lost the b pawn, it's probably the best time to strike. So I played the move pawn to f5, which is the correct decision. And after, if he took the pawn, which he didn't take, but if he took, take g4 is very, very dangerous for him. So what happened instead was rook to b1. I took the pawn. The rook comes back to defend for 7th rank. Now, I think he should just play the move rook to b8, and white should be clearly better in this position. I could take here on g4, but yeah, the triple pawns don't do anything at all for me. I'm probably going to get checkmated after the rook checks on the back rank. So instead I played, but instead he took, takes, and then I pushed. Now things start to get a little bit dangerous for him, because I have this passed pawn, and also this bishop is protecting the queening square. So he pushed his f pawn, I pushed, so we're still in time trouble. Now he makes a serious mistake with rook to b7, and actually allows me a fantastic opportunity to win the game. Now, see if you can spot the winning combination here for black. So pause the video if you want to try and work it out. We were both here very, very low on time. I think I still had like a minute or two, but yeah, we're under some time pressure. So pause the video, try to work it out if you can. Okay, so for those of you who tried it out and found the move rook takes rook, bishop takes, and now the incredibly strong move bishop to e3, which we both missed in the game. This would have absolutely stopped everything, and I completely missed this. I had a mind blank that I was just defending the whole entire game, and then when I finally had my opportunity to uh, win the game, I completely didn't see it. And my opponent also completely missed this idea. I saw the draw immediately in this position with the move pawn to g2, and I immediately went for it because I was just so happy to just finally save my position after having been so worse for so long. But now after the move f7, king e7, d6 takes, he throws in this check, and then I capture the pawn, and the resulting position is just a draw. So that's something I've noticed in a couple of my games, especially the ones later on as well, against strong players, that they'll often sometimes make mistakes as well, as we all do, but the difference is, one, they take their opportunities a lot more, and it's important that you also take your opportunities when you're given them in the game. That could really be the difference between a few hundred rating points. So I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something from it, which I did. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.